so happy to be here. Yay.
So, Carolyn, I'm going to give a little brief intro to you and let everybody who is joining the conversation today on Clemcast IRL know a little bit more about you and what they have to look forward to in this conversation today. So, this is Caroline Cotto, and she is a brave soul who left the country in search of beauty, love, and truth at the age of only 22 years old. And before leaving New York City, which is where she was, to explore artistic opportunities in Paris, Caroline had already toiled away for many years in the music scene in New York City, and that eventually led her to Europe to further enrich her writing and her music. Caroline's been featured on high-profile radio shows such as Little Steven's Underground Garage and Raven's Goldie's Garage. Her song, A Mama to Cry To, which is amazing. Everyone's going to now be introduced to that, was on Cashbox Radio's Top 20 Songs for March 2022 and has been featured by Eric Alper, Cashbox Canada, Grateful Web, Tinnitus. And Caroline has a passion for writing and literature, and her passion for poetry began when she read Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee, which spurred her curiosity for the capacity of love and suffering in the human soul, even at a very young age. Caroline became a published poet before the age of 12, and alas, words were just not enough. She needed a vehicle for these words and music became that vehicle all the way through. Her dad taught her a few chords on guitar, and she became obsessed with the instrument, incorporating everything from blues to rock to soul. She was on a quest to find her voice. Before she left Paris, Caroline recorded her debut EP, Devil in Me, in the Catskills. Her EP became #1 in the blues charts in Paris on Reverb Nation, and it held that spot for several years. Caroline later returned to the United States, landing in New Orleans, where she hones her music and broadens her repertoire in jazz, blues, rock, and all genres, and also through filming and releasing her video Cherry Red, and followed by that, the video A Mama to Cry To, and now her upcoming album release, Bayou Sun, which is super exciting. And I'm honored to welcome you, Caroline, to the show today, and just to shoot the breeze inspirationally and just let you be you.
So happy to be here, Clementine. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, one thing I would love to ask you is, we did cover a little bit of it, but what really spurred your passion initially?
Well, when I was very young, I was very quiet and shy and to myself, but I was always reading a lot of classic literature and poetry, and I had like these big ideas. And so instead of, I guess, interacting with children my age, I just loved the discovery of myself. I didn't at a very young age, so I was just having these questions. I just love the worlds of literature and what the writers wrote in their stories and books, and I found that more interesting than my reality. So I wanted to be in the reality of those books, and I just fell in love with it. And it was hard for me to express these ideas since I was so quiet and I really didn't have anyone to talk to, because people my age weren't really discussing that. So I just started to go on this quest within myself and become inspired by music. And my first influences were the Beatles, because my dad was always playing that, and I asked him to teach me a few chords, and then I went and started to just become obsessed with the instrument, and I just fell in love with their influences. So like Little Richard and so in the 50s rock and roll and blues music, and I just was so fascinated with just discovering and learning about these heroes and how they paved their own path. And at a young age, I was like, I want to do that too. I want to pave my own path and just create a beautiful legacy through art, through music. And that's where it all started. And then within that, I discovered that I had a big voice. I was like, I have this big voice. I just want to share it. But I knew my
Mhm.
first step was just starting to share it, and just this research, intensive research of like music and poetry and art.
I think it's really interesting that you're you're unique nowadays to be in the book readers genre, because it seems to be, something that it's becoming more of a niche. But that how something like that would actually lead you to discovering your voice, and how, so you went from this inner world to being able to express it, outside of you, which is a really amazing journey. And that you carried the songs with you throughout your travels is something that you said. And
Yes,
I find that to be, really cool, because that's something that happens with many artists, that it's there, but it doesn't necessarily come out until, the time is right. How do
yes.
you feel like it finally gets to the point where it bubbles to the surface, and that there's that courage there to just actually shine and be you, and allow your voice to be heard? What leads you to that? And do you remember the first time where you were able to just get up and be like, this is me and this is what I have to say?
It took a long journey. I remember when I was young, I was just afraid to speak up and share. I have so many ideas in my head. I would be sitting there and people would be talking, but I would just keep these wonderful ideas to myself, afraid to speak up. So I think through my age and experience and travels, and now it's just the perfect point because I feel very peaceful. I'm in my highest truth, that I just have a clear vision and idea and perspective of everything that I went through, that I could look on all those experiences with love and not through a lens of negativity. And I feel I'm ready to just now at this age, even though I'm still young, I could just share my wisdom, what I've been through, to help others. And that was really, but I remember there were so many solitary moments because I've traveled so long. Well, I started off in my room because I would play guitar in my room by myself, and just wishing and dreaming, just like looking at my walls and imagining different distant places like if that were in New York. And when I took that initial step, once I graduated college, I knew that I had to leave for my freedom, from my surroundings, for myself, to just leave and discover who I was as a person. And I know that a lot of people are really afraid to take that, to just to look within themselves. But for me, it was like my greatest power. I just love discovering, and I was just so connected to my pain, or what my darkness, what I was going through at the moment, that I really had time to look deep into it. And I think as an artist, that's our greatest service, to look within these emotions and to share it and express it through our art. But I
Mhm.
noticed a lot of people, when I would express it, they were resistant and afraid to really look within themselves, and they get distracted by other things. But for me, this was just a great purpose to have, and I couldn't accept just not looking into that. I just had to share that.
Yeah. Well, they say that being your greatest version of you is really, some for some of us, it's our greatest fear. It's our greatest fear, because we can tend to be our biggest critics, and are the ones who judge us the most harshly can be ourselves. And a lot of that comes through different conditioning and things like that. But it can be terrifying, and so maybe that's why, a lot of people are afraid to, look within,
Yeah.
whereas you knew there was something in there that you had to see. How did you land on, Paris in particular as your first stop when you decided to leave New York? And how did, at that point, where were you musically? And then how did it everything begin to evolve once you left, from one destination to land into another, acclimate in that environment, and how did that change your music?
Well, in high school, we had a choice between French, Spanish, and Latin, and I believe another language, but I think those are the three main languages. And I chose French. And so I studied French in high school for 4 years, and I had just had such a great passion for French. And I had wonderful teachers in high school, and I fell in love with the French literature. I became inspired by French poets, Albert Camus and Rimbaud, Baudelaire. So I already felt connected to the French, their perspective on romance and love and suffering. I felt that it was just like this beautiful grand gesture. They weren't afraid to splatter their emotions on a page in a very expressive, like, symbolic way. Beautiful symbolism for life. And I also love French cinema,
Yeah,
which influenced my music videos as well.
Gerard
French.
Depardieu. He's
Yeah,
he's like the one I know the most.
yes. And so it just I feel like it all just started to click once you take the step, then the universe opens up the next step and you just trust those nudges. So it was pushing me in that direction already. I had just had this passion for French and I love the books. It was just pushing me more to research and discover more and more. And I read in high school a book by Hemingway. I remember my English teacher in 11th grade. It was A Movable Feast, and he moved to Paris from America. So I just noticed this pattern, all these writers and musicians like Miles Davis in the 50s, and Hemingway in the 1920s, they were in the 1920s they were called a lost generation. So
Mm.
these groups of expats traveled from America to Paris. So I love to daydream. So I was fantasizing about this time period, and I became in love with that. I feel like that was just my really first great love, was just this romanticism and daydreaming about these people and places and how I could fit in. And I related to them. I didn't relate to people around me, but I related to what they were feeling and how they had a clear vision. They believed in their art. They were going to travel and discover, and they went through a lot of wild, crazy circumstances. And sometimes those circumstances led to their downfall, and so I was learning what to do, what not to do from these writers and artists.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then your music was developing, and what kind of flair do you feel like, because your music is so bluesy and almost, very southern in a way, but I know that there was an influence that came through your music from these travels. And how do you feel like the flair presents itself? Is it more in the cinematography, or also just, I mean, obviously in your songwriting, but I'll let you answer that.
Okay. Well, I always listened to music of the South, uh, and particularly, I'm just thinking of Sun Records and the music that came out of the Sun Studio. And so already that's in Memphis. So already that's a Southern influence. And uh particularly in blues
What
music.
are some of the music? What are some of the artists that came out of Sun
uh,
Studios?
well, Roy Orbison, Carl Perkins, Little Richard, well, not in Sun, but Elvis.
Right.
So yeah, so I just really just connected to the way the music sounded, and just the tonalities, and going deeper than that to blues music, uh just the way they expressed themselves, just how the voice was such the focal point of their expression, and how they were singing of their suffering and pain. It was just so powerful. It wasn't delicate or sweet. It was with a lot of just power, and with a growl and emphasis. So I just really stuck with that and understood that through my own experiences. And my voice has always been big, and I'm very small. So I was just like, I connected to these big voices. I'm like, they're really expressing themselves. Like Howling Wolf, like he has such a growl and just power in his voice. So I just connected to the sound, and just
Yeah.
really, yeah.
Do you feel like I feel like there's a connection there. People who view themselves as smaller in stature, and they tend to have these larger than life sort of energy, a larger than life sort of persona, or just even if it's not a persona, like they're a comedian or an actor or something, or even a performer on stage. But the energy is enormous, right? And do you feel like being somebody who, you mentioned that you're very small, so you've seen yourself as very small in stature, in like physical reality, do you feel like that it was a birthing point of you having it to be necessary to have a big voice and to have something to say?
That's a very excellent question. Yes, because due to my when I was younger, I was always the shortest person in my class. And I was also bullied because of I was so short and quiet. So I felt and I didn't defend myself at that young age. But when I sang, I was and I felt power. I felt this wonderful strength. It was just so beautiful. Just when I was just singing, that just went away and I was just fully connected to my truth and myself.
Mm. Yeah, you were tapped into your stream, like a consciousness stream
Yes.
that is like you're tuning a channel, and it's like, this is interesting, that's interesting. Oh, this is where I
Yes.
need to really, dive in. I had asked you about your definition of fulfillment. Do you want to just off the cuff that, or do you want me to remind you a little bit of what you had said?
Fulfillment, I believe fulfillment is for anyone is when you're living in your truth and you're connected to yourself and just expressing love towards yourself and that just reflecting out into others. I'm just a big believer in love in all the senses and it's just so powerful and beautiful to me. So just that pure happiness of just kindness and giving to others and sharing your experiences with others and after so many years of feeling so solitary, it felt like I didn't really have anyone. I'm just in a beautiful time in my life where I just love expressing and sharing my story and what I've been through, and realizing that a lot of people are connecting to my story. And I'm just receiving beautiful messages, and it's just so nice. And that's what life is about, just that connection and sharing. We're not meant to feel like we are alone. We're never alone. We have so many angels watching us, and the human experience, we're meant to be connected with each other. It's not
Hmm.
meant to be a lonely experience. And I felt that way for a long time. I felt there was power in being solitary or just hyper independent. There's also like a negative side to that too.
Well, and I feel like you also sort of answered to that too, though, because happiness, I heard Dr. B Serious say he's got this new podcast called Serious Vibes, spelled like Sirius the Star System, and it's a,
Yes.
a musician's podcast, and it's excellent. And he said something the other day about happiness is a happening,
Mm,
and so it's fleeting, and where what you just talked about, tapping into your truth and living it and being it, and being the love that you are, and sharing your journey, and realizing that it's affecting others in a positive way. All those things are nothing like happiness. They are very fulfilling because
yes.
there's really not anything that can describe them other than the feeling of fulfillment. And
Yes.
like when you've finished an amazing song, an amazing recording, it's really not happiness that you feel, I wouldn't believe. Like I have really never done something like that, but I've done other projects, and a lot of times it's like you just feel fulfilled, and then it's like it goes on its own journey from there.
Yes.
Whereas if it was happiness, you'd need to keep on tapping back into it just to keep recreating that feeling, and it's not necessarily what
Yes.
it is. So that's really epic that and I've seen some of your videos that you've been putting out on the hero's journey. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, and like what inspires you to do that, and also how does that benefit you as far as a musician and as far as somebody who is putting art out into the world to be able to express things that aren't like, this isn't music, this isn't a poem, this isn't a song, but this is another expression of just like the beauty of life. If one person is uplifted by it, that's all there is to it, or
That's a great question. Well, it just came to me. I mean, the hero's journey is an idea used in a lot of literature and cinema of it's 12 steps of a hero leaving the ordinary world and going out forth and being tested and finding allies and dealing with enemies. And I mean, there's so
every
many.
movie you've ever seen, every book you've ever read.
Right. I mean,
Lives.
they have this guideline to follow the hero's journey. So it just came into my head one day. I was like, I was thinking of content to create to feel more connected to my fan base, and I was like, let me just use an idea, like just my passion for literature, and connect it with an idea, introduce people they don't know about it. I mean, they probably know about the journey one has and like the commonalities and the repetition they see in movies and films, but there's actually a guideline called the hero's journey. So I thought it would be cool to relate it to my own life, and it also gives me the opportunity to reflect on my own life and give my fans advice. And it's been wonderful. First, it gives me a sense of consistency of putting out the videos every week, and I love the themes and ideas. So each title gives me a sense. I think the latest one I did was resurrection, and I love the idea of being resurrected, and so it just gives me a lot of time to reflect and relate it to my life and just share it with people and hope it connects with them. So I love it. Sometimes my greatest ideas, they just come out of just, it feels like thin air. Like when
Yeah,
you're not thinking hard about it, you just get the idea, just like, oh, this will be something really nice to do
you're in your flow of
in the
life.
flow. Mm.
Yep, and you have been so much lately with doing your shoot for your album and finishing up recording and everything that this there's like that, all of that is incorporated in that journey. And so I feel like when you're in that flow, you know, that's when you are given, I feel like we're given, like I think every thought that there's
Yes.
ever that ever exists all at once. And
Yeah.
we're tapped into our own flow and into the right stream, it's like boop, it's like you're given that idea. It's, we don't create the idea, we're given it. We get
Yes.
an idea, right? You get it because you received it, and that's just so cool that it pops in because you're in the flow. It's like that's what, how another an affirmation too, that yes, you're on the right path and you already know that, but it's like wow, even when you're not looking for evidence, it shows up. So it's a very gracious and abundant universe that shows up and says, hey, I got your back with this. And that you are able to say, oh, you know, this is a really creative and amazing and beautiful thing, and step right into it and bring it to life, you know? So
Yes.
wow, that's
Mhm.
super cool. I wanted to know more about, you know, what was behind that. And I've been enjoying following along. What keeps you motivated?
Wonderful. Well, I feel artists, they have this perception, or people, I feel we're all artists. People, we have this idea that we always have to be active. We always have to be in a state of motion, create, 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 be busy, be busy, be busy. We have to do this, that, and that. And they feel like they have to accomplish so many tasks in a short period of time that they don't enjoy the journey of it. And so I just enjoy the day to day knowing that I see my vision is true. I have faith in my vision. I know it's true. And I know that the small steps I take each day towards it is going to make that vision possible. And I
Mm,
think just, I mean, I'm from New York, so that's a big culture of busy, 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 rushing, rushing, rushing. And I love action. There's a time for it when you have like inspired action. You get an idea and you just feel you're in the flow and you do it. But I think it gets very toxic when people feel like they have to constantly do that. And for a long time, I felt too that I wasn't accomplished if I wasn't creating, being active. And I mistook that rest is also you're creating and rest. You're replenishing yourself. You're nourishing yourself. You're just honoring yourself. You're not in that constant state. It's important to slow down. So
Mhm.
that's important advice I want to share. And also, what keeps me
Do you ever
just
feel like you do hit a wall, or
excuse me.
do you ever feel like you do hit a wall, or you just kind of go, gosh, I feel kind of stuck, or are you just so much, mostly in the flow that it's just like, no, I'm slowing down right now, but that's okay.
When I was definitely younger,
Mhm.
I felt, yes, I would hit walls and I would get frustrated. I felt very, it just caused a lot of confliction in myself and didn't feel right. And but now I'm able to recognize, I'm like, okay, I'm hitting a wall, but I'm able to tune into a higher vibration and knowing, okay, I'm recognizing, I'm honoring this feeling, but I don't want to stay in this unsettling feeling. I want to move forward in a better way. So I think
Mhm.
the important part of the journey is recognizing those emotions. Oh, recognizing this is making me feel this way, but now I know how to make it better through my own experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Just acknowledging what comes up and going, okay, you're valid. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
What you've shown me. And you know what? We can all do, the whole world could do with more of that, because we can tend to see a problem and fixate on it, see
Yes.
an obstacle and fixate on it versus, see it, recognize it for what it is, and then go, okay, so how do I get past it, exactly as you said, or how do I integrate it and learn from it and, make it part of what I'm sharing or doing, right? And art is an amazing way to do that, of course. If
Yes.
you can give people three sage tidbits of insight that you've gained through your own personal experiences, what would those be?
Oh, I have a lot on my journey. Well, the first one I would like to share is for artists is that we have this perception that struggle is romantic. I think we romanticize pain a lot, and I've been a victim of that. We've all been victim of just fixating, like we discussed, on the negativity. And I think artists, they find, oh yes, I have to be sad or depressed to create art. That's going to be my greatest art. I have to go through these bad experiences. So they're constantly chasing for these negativity, either through drugs, alcohol,
Oh,
or
yeah.
bad relationships. And
Or accidentally attracting it, right? Because of
yes,
the focus.
exactly. So now it's nice that I have this realization that you don't have to create out of hateful places. You could create out of happiness, and that could be your greatest work and joy. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go through something tragic to feel like your art is worthy of something. Your art is already worthy. You're already worthy. I think,
Wow.
yeah.
That is a huge, beautiful insight. I mean, and when you were speaking about it, even what comes to mind is like how true that really is, that and I don't and I guess I can see why artists do tend to sometimes veer in that direction, because when you listen intently or you feel intently or read intently or,
Yes.
look at some art, you can really see and feel where this was somebody, ridding themselves of some pain, right? Whether it's the lyrics or whatever it may be. And but then even just in general society, I mean, there were memes that went around. They were like viral memes for the longest time. The struggle is real, right? And
Oh my
eventually
gosh.
some artist out there eventually made the meme say the snuggle is real. And that one even went more viral. So it's like, okay, let's alchemize this, right? This what are we creating by embracing that? And even just like there's a moving company, and I don't know if it's like nationwide, but I've seen it on the West Coast. It's called Starving Artists Moving Company.
Oh my
So it's
God.
like, why are we affirming things we
Yes.
don't want? Do we want to be a starving artist, or do we want to be an artist that is fulfilled in every way, right?
Yes.
It's such a cool insight. Okay, so that was one.
Fun.
And what's another one? You
Okay.
don't have to do three if you don't want to, but if you feel like it.
I could do three. No, I'm gonna stick to the question,
I know there's a million, but hey, somebody out there needs to hear this, and
right?
that's why I'm here. Your heart is speaking to me, to everyone, and so
Oh,
thank
well, we're both spiritual teachers, and I've learned a lot from you. And well, I think number one thing, because a lot of people live in a three-dimensional world, is that your
you.
thoughts create your actions. So whatever you think is reflected out to you. If you feel bad about yourself or you feel you're not worthy, you're not strong enough, that's going to be reflected. You're going to be meet people that feel the same way. And for a long time in my life, I mean, I left home at a very young age, and I was going through a lot of things during that time period in New York that finally made me want to break free and leave New York. Uh that I don't fault myself for this, but I was fixating on a lot of negative things, and that was being reflected out into my reality. The people and situations, I felt stuck, so I was going to meet people who didn't move forward in life, or you feel unworthy or unloved, and you're going to be in relationships that are not a reflection of your highest self. So that's that's a big step when you realize that you have the power. And I have a song on my record called Heaven is in Your Hands. It's really in your hands. You have the power to change your life and to think differently, and to know that your thoughts are going to create your actions. And for a long time, I was always looking outside of myself for the answers. I would view people, hold them in a very high esteem, asking them, oh, help me in this, help me in that, even though I knew the answer deep down within myself.
Mm.
But you were looking for that. I was looking for that affirmation or that validation from other people, and we all do this. So, and now it's just, I tell people, just really, your answer is within yourself. If you have a feeling in your gut that something isn't right, please trust that. And just be aware of that. Just really just trust yourself. And really is, we're always asking people questions. I think a lot in music, because we are so sensitive and we put a lot of emotions into our music and art, that we're looking for validation. But as I expressed before, you are worthy, you are enough.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And it's a huge reminder. And, like you were saying, sort of seeking from others and not validating your own, thoughts and whatnot. It's kind of like it's the hugest takeaway I'm getting from you is that that answer is within. We might all end up sort of at the same place with the answer eventually, in that there's no real separation,
Yeah.
looking at it from the level of quantum physics, even. So 99.999% of matter is empty space. So this illusion of you being over there,
Yep.
me being over here, no, we're actually molding and affecting and vibrating out creation right now in this moment. And so when we can start to see that in ourselves and realize, oh, like, why am I putting all these people above me and all these opinions above mine? It's not a competition. We're all here to find those answers within, and we might find them in different ways, and the answer may be slightly different, but ultimately you come home to what you really are, and from there everything changes.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And I
Oh,
think we're on three.
yes.
Three, simple. Love is always the answer. Just look at every situation, look at people with love. And also forgiveness is so powerful. There's so many people in my life. The person doesn't have to be in your life anymore, but if you forgive them for yourself, it's just such a beautiful feeling. And I don't believe in hate. I don't feel like we have, I hate when people have to separate love, hate. I'm all about just love. And so just spread as much love as you can throughout this life, because it's going to take you to amazing places.
Be the love you wish to see in the world.
Yes, exactly.
I have I have like a random interesting question, Caroline, that just came to me, and I
Cool.
don't know if I'll be able to find it, but let me see if I can. It had to do with let's see. It was a like a meme I saw the other day, and I thought, wow, any brilliant musician, um it would be amazing to ask this question. Oh, here it is. Here it is. I found it. So it was on a meme, and I don't know if this is, it doesn't say where it's coming from, just as studies suggest. Well, that's a big pet peeve of mine. Like what study where, but it got me like, woo, going. And it says a musician's brain is different.
Mm.
And that studies suggest that musicians have a better understanding of nonverbal communication. Has
Hmm.
that been something that you feel like you've experienced? I know it's like I'm springing it out of the blue, but it's just like, does anything come to mind where you're like, oh, well, yeah, they're sitting, they're cueing off of one another, making a creation on a stage or whatever. So maybe it gets honed that way, or
Yes, yes, it's very spiritual. I mean, it's always, I think there's a quote saying like the words left unsaid are powerful, but it's
mm,
really, or within, for me, it's within the silence that the greatest revelations are found. Because I mean, in music, you're expressing something, and even when you're performing in front of an audience and your voice is the focal point and you're playing with a band, and it's just that connection with the audience. You don't have to be directly talking to them. You're not talking to you. It's not like you're saying I am talking to you, but it's just that connection that you bring through. I think that's just, art is just the greatest way to connect ourselves to others. So it's really just in within those silent moments when you're just really expressing or singing and performing your music, that the greatest discoveries are found or feelings are felt. And also too, when you're playing with a band, you just really have to feel and just feel into each other. And the greatest thing is to not think so much.
mm,
It's don't think, just allow everything to flow, allow the mistakes, allow the high moments to happen. Just feel the space, feel yourself, and that's going to connect you to your environment and to the moment. So it's very powerful, the nonverbal expression. You don't have to directly say it, it's something that's felt. And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's no coincidence that so many people, will refer to, certain like legendary bands versus just like one particular artist, but like a band, and say, they really made magic. They were really magical together. They,
Yes.
and it's true. It's like,
Yes.
but that magic is coming from this unspoken spell that they're spelling together in
Yes.
their silent communication of making this beautiful creation together, and just like, wow, so cool.
It's amazing.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for answering
Yay.
that. So, I'll share with the Clemcast and the Caroline Cotto audience a little personal tidbit. So,
Yes.
Caroline and I, we actually met in a very just such a synchronistic and interesting universal connection, in that we have this amazing being of a friend. He is now in the non-physical, but Caroline had this beautiful, loving, close, and significant relationship with him. His name's Tim, and I did too. And we were just, best super homies. And Tim was best super homies with everybody he ever met, so that's not unusual. And we loved loved Tim dearly, and he still communicates with us. And so a little over a year ago, Tim decided to go a one-way ticket into the wormhole jumping portion of his experience, but he's still here and he still talks to us. And so I wanted to bring up that you may have something to share that is a beautiful homage to him, and also just another way of inspiring people to express their feelings through poetry, through writing. I mean, this eventually one day could be a song. Your songwriting is amazing, and I can't wait to lead everybody to all your avenues when we wrap up. But do you want to share that writing? We're coming up on the anniversary of
Yes.
his life celebration, where a bunch of people got together in St. Pete's, Florida, to celebrate the life of this amazing being. And like I said, he's still here with us. Like, I feel him so strong right now, Carol.
Me too. I feel like he's hugging me right now.
They call it kriyas. When you get those chills going up and down your spine. But Tim's like, yes, yes, talk about me. You guys are rad. And I have his fire ant on today because I knew that this might come up. So I wore his fire ant pin to help channel him. But yes, please, if you would love to share that, I would love to be present and just feel the
Yes.
beauty of what you what came through and what you channeled.
Well, may I give the audience a little bit of the overview of just the special journey
Absolutely.
I've had with Tim?
Absolutely.
So I was a young girl, about 22 years old, living in Paris, and I was about to turn 23. And so I was living in Paris, but then I moved to London at the time. So I was going back and forth. I lived in Paris for about a year, and then there's a period where I was going back and forth between London and Paris because I wanted to explore the music scene in London so badly, and I did. And so there was a time where I knew that that period of my life was coming to a close. I had to make a decision that I could go back home to New York. I didn't want to. I viewed then going back home to New York as a defeat, because I've just had this amazing time traveling and just learning a lot about myself. And I met Tim when I was 19 in Florida through another mutual friend of ours, Sean. Shout out to Sean. and and I felt when I saw Tim, his presence, I was like, wow, he was just so true to himself, free, expressive. Everyone who knew Tim is that every word he said, you were hanging on to every word he said. It was just this beautiful word puzzle. I don't even know how to describe it, but like there's just this masterpiece of words he would just throw out of thin air, but it would sound just so just concise and just so brilliant. He was so intelligent and expressive.
He's like a word wizard.
A word wizard, exactly. And so me being just a more a quiet person, I was just amazed. I would just listen to him talk for hours. So we were connected again while I was in Paris, and we were talking. I remember the exact moment. I was living in Belleville, which is a part of Paris. And I remember the room I was staying at. I could see myself now. We were talking online, and he was traveling around America. He was going on his own voyage of just traveling around. And I know he spent some time with you and during that period. And he would talk to me about you so much, that you were the most amazing person, and you were having all these great adventures in like New Mexico and California and all around. And he was like, and I mentioned that I was that I wanted to, there was time for me to leave. And he was like, he put me in connection with Cassia. I have to give a shout out to Cassia because she's a very strong person in our lives.
Another mutual friend.
Mutual friend. She's an intuitive, a healer, just a Wonder Woman. And she affirmed so many things about my life and my past lives. And it became so clear to me through what she said that I had to move to New Orleans, and the environment that I was living in wasn't conducive or right. So I was introduced to her through Tim. He gave me that gift. And then once he gave me that gift, he was like, how about I take you to New Orleans? And it was just this beautiful grand, like kind of like a hero's journey of like, you meet this person on your journey who's like this wizard. And he was like, I will carry you on my chariot to my car with it was a Kia, but he made it sound so magical and fantastical. It was like a chariot that carry you to New Orleans. And I was like, that sounds like the perfect idea. So at the time, I believe he was, I don't know where he was exactly. I would have to go back. But he traveled 16 hours to meet me in Madison, Wisconsin. And so I took a plane from Paris to from no London to Dublin to Chicago, and then I remember I took a little tiny plane. It was like less than an hour flight to Madison, Wisconsin from Chicago, and then I was amazed because I never been in the Midwest before. So to me, I was just in a new territory. It was just so it was a foreign to me. So I was excited. And coming from New York, just the ideas you get of the Midwest, of just the landscape, it's just so different from an urban environment. So I just didn't know what I was getting myself into. So, but he made it sound so beautiful. He's like, we're going to go on this voyage together and I'm going to take you to where you're supposed to be. And he just put so much, he has had so much support and love for my art. And just, he just heightened every moment. Like just even just going to a store was just this beautiful voyage. It's just he just showed me that how you can just make every moment feel wonderful, beautiful, and amazing. So we
Magical,
yes,
embrace the unknown.
exactly. So we traveled from Madison to his hometown, Dubuque, Iowa, which was a culture shock for me, but it was amazing. Like I met his family and his friends and just had an idea of his hometown and where he grew up and just it was a lovely time. And then from Dubuque, Iowa, we went to Kentucky. We drove so oh my gosh. It was I love traveling. I love road trips. So it was amazing to me. I was like, take me anywhere, I'm ready because I had no attachments. I had attachments to no one anything. I was just on this quest for my music and for myself. And we spent some time in Nashville and I think he made CDs for me because I didn't know how to do that at the time. And we would go up, it's called Music Row, which is like all the record companies in Nashville and the studios. And we would just hand out my CD to every record company. And I remember we went to everyone. It's like, here's my record. It was amazing just to see inside those facilities too. It was a great like musical knowledge experience and knowledge. And I remember I recorded we went to Jack White's too, Third Man Records, and I recorded like he has like a booth, and so I recorded like one of my songs there. So it was just wonderful, just making these little trips and just seeing all these new things I've never seen before. And then we spent some time in Florida, and eventually our paths. It was becoming clear that we were going a different direction and paths in our lives. And New Orleans was my destination, but it wasn't his destination, and that was a very hard learning experience because I was just so attached to the idea that I was getting to New Orleans through him, but I discovered that you can't it's not it was just contingent on myself. It wasn't contingent on him. I just had this expectation, but I had this journey experience with him that was very special. And it's yeah, after that time, it just makes me sad that we didn't talk to each other for 5 years. There was this period of disconnection, and I found out about his transition. So it was hard for me to accept because we had this beautiful time together in history, and then there was this long separation, and then it's just you find out that he's not physically here anymore. So it just felt it was hard for
Yeah.
me. It was hard.
I feel like it's hard no matter what. There's
Yeah.
this challenge there, whether you
Yeah.
saw them the day before or, what
Yeah.
was the last thing we said to each other and all of this. And, we process it all and we go, okay, like, I don't know, like Cassie has been very instrumental in helping us to really see how the connection's still there now. And
Yes.
the way the signs and the things that he shows, she comes through and really affirms a lot. And so yeah, and we can feel him, so it's like he's here and we just can't see him. So the more
Exactly.
that we can like get past our own like everything that goes on in your head, like who am I going to talk to on the phone for 5 hours, and our own like loss, then we can really tap back into that beautiful connection and just maintain it as long as it's available.
Yes. So I'm ready to read the poem. Okay.
It's
I'm not gonna cry. If I cry, I accept and allow all the emotions that may come from me reading this poem.
okay.
But okay. Midwestern warrior, take me to places I have never been. Let your bell bottoms and long hair flow freely on the hood of your blue Kia, our chariot of fire on orange scented highways to the Florida sun. You carried me like a child from Wisconsin, and I felt born again, brand new to America, our land of adventure. We kissed and drove madly into the night with cries of freedom and rock and roll. I remember the heartbeat of Iowa and the railway that took us to the top of the city. I saw the Mississippi and imagined you as a young boy throwing sticks and stones in the water, laughing loudly as the end of rainbows turned your wishes into gold. And now here we are dancing in the dark near beer cans and water towers. I remember meditating in the woods of Kentucky. We heard the sounds of leaves, and it was just us laying down in God's creation and no one else to bother two young hearts. And the Nashville skyline shone brightly, my darling. Up and down Music Row, the ghost of legends held us in a song. For years, I dreamt of Roy's guitar and glasses. I swear his halo still glows down Broadway like yours, wild and free.
Okay. That is just, it just is. And it's just so like you can feel the experience that you've described, you know, just living on and living through that beautiful expression. And I'm sure there's many more to come. You know, he'll come through and show us all kinds of things. But wow. Like for me, I made a crazy video, like, and I could only do it on Vimeo because of copyright.
Oh,
It's just like it was Tim style. It was very analog, and it was just like something that we shared and some music that I love and that he listened to, and you know, just these different connections. And I'm sure we're going to have all kinds of other little ways that he's going to come up and inspire expression.
yes,
And people may never even know where it came from. It doesn't matter. It's amazing.
yes.
Oh, Caroline, I love you. And I am so honored that you were here today. I have so much respect for you, for your
Thank
journey,
you.
for what you're bringing, and just the fact that you are, you know what you are, you know who you are. You're so firmly rooted, and yet still, you know, expanding and growing, and so able to just like touch people's hearts and to connect. And that's so important and so huge. The way that your authenticity comes through is I think a nudge that a lot of people need in their lives, you know. So you're gonna inspire people in that way too, that it's like, you know, you don't have to be any one specific thing or another, just be you. And those, you know, the moths that are attracted to your energy will flutter in, and the rest, it doesn't matter, you know. That's awesome. How would you want people to discover your music? Is it through more through YouTube, through Instagram, through your website, through all of it?
Yes, through all of it, I have www.carolinecotto.com, Cotto, and I'm very active on all social medias, but I do have a personal love for Instagram, where I do share a lot of more insights into my personal life and my desires and just daily things and relatable content. So, but yeah, you can find me anywhere. I
Oh,
want to I want to be a friend to everyone. I believe it's important. I love connection. I think it's so special. After years of being so quiet into myself, I just love to connect. So every fan, every person I meet is a friend. I like that idea.
yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I will put all the links for your Instagram and for YouTube. Caroline's got some amazing videos to discover and to get a better taste of her music. Is it streaming on any of the platforms as well?
Yes, it's
Most
streaming on all music platforms. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. So they just look up Caroline Cotto and they'll find your music that's there.
Yes.
And is there any indication of when your album might be dropping, this beautiful Bayou Sun?
Yes. October.
October.
Such a mystical month.
Oh, it's the perfect time. It's the perfect time. Yes. So we will maybe we'll come back and have another visit around that time and talk about all the amazing, exciting things that will be happening surrounding that, or when things calm down a little from that drop period, and just reconnect. But thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank you, Clementine, so much. It was such a delight.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. Make sure you go find Caroline Cotto. Do yourself a favor. Follow the music, listen, inspire yourself, and share all of your amazingness as well.